class. Now you were learning about the difference. This is also the topic of the Sikha that we're learning in the right after this class. And that is the difference between the spies, the scouts that Moses sent in and the scouts that Joshua sent in. So first of all, we have to understand, we learned, if you remember in the first mimer that we had, what exactly is the land of Israel? What does it mean, flowing milk and honey? And we said that the whole point of the land of Israel and this commandment of going into Israel and the stress that the Jewish people in Israel, good morning, Boker Tov, do in Israel, is because Israel is part of the world. And it's that part of the world that attaches the Creator, reveals the Creator in His creation. And that's why it has to be, and it can only be done through the commandments. And the commandments can only really be done in the land of Israel. That's what we learned in the first month. Remember that? And so that's the commandments are, and there's commandments which are positive commandments, things you have to do and things you have to refrain from. Prohibitions and and commandments. So the prohibitions, those are from the side of Gevurah, God's severity. That's like honey. Honey is very, very sharp. And milk is white, the color white, that represents chesed. So it's kindness and severity, which is the positive commandments. Kindness is like the positive commandments, things you have to do. And negative commandments, in other words, prohibitions, those are the things you have to refrain from. That's what it means the land is flowing with milk and honey. That's in a spiritual way. Of course, the normal, simple meaning is it's a land of great abundance, to the point where the milk drips from the goats and the cows, and the sweetness of the land is everywhere. Some people say honey means the sap of dates or just in general fruits, sweet things. Okay, that was the point of the first mimer that we learned. And that the spies didn't want to go in. They said they didn't want to go in the Jewish people because they wanted to stay in the desert and not reveal it in the physical world. They wanted to reveal in the spiritual world, what they call spiritual Israel, spiritual Jerusalem. Okay, now we're in the last mimer. But we see in the end that the whole goal is to go into the land of Israel, despite what the Jewish people think or their reservations about going into the land of Israel, that it's too dangerous, it's too hard. But the fact is that God wants us, the Jewish people, to go into the land of Israel. And why? Because from the land of Israel, they can give blessing to the whole world. And that's the purpose of the Jews, is to bring blessing and meaning to the whole world. Okay, but before they did that, so Moses sent in 12 spies, which didn't go so well. Moses' 12 spies, big disappointment, which that also has to be explained according to the Torah, and why the Torah even tells us such a shameful story. But later on, 40 years later, 39 years, 38 years later, there was Joshua sent in his spies. And Joshua's spies, they were more successful. So he says, okay, one of the reasons that his spies were more successful was because he sent them to Jericho. In Hebrew, the word Jericho is Yerecho. The word Yerecho is mainly composed of the word smell, reach. One minute. Let's put this, here we go. That's the idea of reach, of smell. What is the smell? So the smell of his garments, that's what Yitzchak said to Yaakov, the smell of your garments is like the smell of the garden of God. It's a garden that blessed God. The smell, what's this thing with smell? This is also Moshiach. Moshiach is going to judge everyone, is going to judge according to his sense of smell. Smell. And also it says also Mashiach will be judged. They'll know who Mashiach is by smelling. The rabbis will be able to sense the smell. It says, what's the sense? So sometimes God is also called the master of smell, Bal HaChotem, the master of the nose. What is this smell? What's going on? So it says the Rebbe, the smell is the blessing which is brought down every time we do a commandment or make a blessing or even think positive thoughts or even refrain from saying something that's forbidden or thinking something that's forbidden or doing something that's forbidden. So that's from the commandments, both the positive and the negative commandments, mostly from the positive commandments, there comes this smell of godliness, a fragrance of godliness. Now the fragrance is not the thing itself, right? You have perfume and you have the fragrance that comes from the perfume. But on one hand, the fragrance is the purpose of the perfume, is that fragrance will come from it. But still, that's not the body of the thing. So here we have, when a Jew does a commandment of God, a physical commandment in this physical world, and only in Israel are the commandment, only in Israel can all the commandments be done. There's some commandments that can't be done at all. Some people say that all the commandments are they're only valid in their most pure sense in the land of Israel. That the Ramban says that. So the commandments, when a Jew does a commandment, so it draws down this smell of God, fragrance of godliness in the world. And this makes a garment. This is the garment, right? The garment, like also a garment is not the person, right? But it still makes a garment for the person. It's like the smell, the fragrance. And this is called reach. It's called the smell. Like it says, Harichu b'yiras Hashem. They smelled him with the smell of God, with the fear of God. They had the fear of God. Harichu b'yiras Hashem. This is talking about Moshiach from Isaiah. And this is like a smell. The smell is not the thing itself, but it is just a ray that comes from it. Also, this ray of godliness, ray of Ein Sof, the infinite one, which is called Arich Anpin. But we did this yesterday, but we'll do it again because it's so beautiful. This is what's called God's long faces or long nose. Sometimes Arich Anpin means patience. The word in Hebrew for anger is af. The word for nose is af. Also the same. Erich Anpin, also Erich Apayim Barav Chesed, we say. That God is Erich Anpin. When a person is angry, Rashi says, V'chara api v'hem. My anger, it says, when a person is angry, so he breathes hard. He snorts through his nose. So that's what it means. God says, I will have long patience with the Jewish people. Arech api. And this is the same thing as my nose, my sense of smell. Like it says, Be'edra of Nasi, it says in the Zohar. And there's Edra Rab, Edra Zutra. And the Edra Rab, if I'm not mistaken, Edra Rab is in Nasi. And the Edra Zutra, I think, is in Pinchas. It says, I'm praying to the master of the fragrance, the master of the nose. I am supplicating in front of the master of the nose, the smell. Why would you call God the master of the nose? Because this whole thing of smell, this is the level of reach, the fragrance of God. And God is called the master of this fragrance. Namely, this is like the perfume that the smell comes from. God is the essence. What is the smell? The smell is the blessing which is drawn down by Torah and the commandments. This revelation of God, it's just a ray of godliness, but still it's called, that's the reach. Okay, that's the idea of Yorecho. This is what a person has to check out all the time. Am I doing the commandments? Am I using my thought, speech, and action, which are the garments of the soul? Am I using them for filling them with a good smell? Am I doing the commandments with my thought, with my speech, with my action? We'll see. That's what you have to check out, right? The smell, the fragrance the blessings that are coming from my thought, speech, and action, am I connecting it to the Creator? Am I doing commandments with it? And this is the source of the smell that comes from it. And this ray of godliness, which comes from when you do a commandment, that's what it means, Baruch atah. Blessed are you, God. What does it mean God is blessed? It means that we're drawing godliness down. It's like a bricha, like a pool of water. You draw from one place to another. It says, Borech et gamalim. To bring it says that, what is it, Rivka, she brought the camels down. Camels, to bring them down is called the borech. Also, there's a Mishnah, the borech et geffen. If you take a vine and you take the top of the vine and you stick it in the ground, so is that considered to be planting or not? So this process of taking the top and bringing it down, that's called borech. It's the same thing as bringing down the smell into the world. This is pure godliness brought into the world. And that's the job of the Jewish people, to bring pure godliness into the world. Now, the fact of the matter is there's no place where God is not. I mean, God is everywhere. But when we use the world for what God wants, that pleases God. It's hard to, we can't really comprehend this, what we're talking about, but it's the fact. Here we are, God gave us the commandments. He revealed himself on Mount Sinai. And when we do the commandments, God reacts. Very important, basic lesson of Chassidut, that God wants us to be his partners, and he reacts immediately. Sometimes you don't see it, maybe you don't feel it. That's because our eyes are not proper receptacles, but our souls are. Eventually, in the future, the raising of the dead, even our eyes will be the proper receptacles, even the flesh. What we call basar, all flesh will. So this ray of godliness, which is drawn down by means of doing the commandments, gavoa me'od, is very, very high. Hainu ein sof baruch hu, it's infinite. It's a ray of the infinite, an infinite ray. It's also infinite. Shehu bli gavul, it's unlimited, bebechinas mata mata, and therefore it's not limited to just being above. It can also be revealed below. Ma'od, makom, and gavul. It's drawn down very, very low into a place which is limited. That's what it means when the Caliph said that the land of Israel is tova, or it's ma'od me'od, very, very good. In other words, it's not just like heaven. This is pure godliness in the physical world. And therefore, nikra erech apayim. Therefore, God is called erech apayim, long suffering, or long, what is it? Long patience. Aricha da'anpin. It's a long, so to speak, the nose. Shemarich bebechinas reach, namely that God brings down this smell. That's what it means. It's long. This pure godliness, this ray of godliness comes into the world. That's why it's long. It's revealed here in the world. That's why God put us down here. That we'll be the connectors. L'halbish and hashama, God puts the soul, bebechinas machshava dibur maisa, of the mitzvahs of the Torah. So that's what it means to put a soul, a godliness into the thought, speech, and action when we do the commandments with our thought, speech, and action. We said that before. That's why the angels say 3 times Kaddish, 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 Kaddish. One is thought, one speech, and action. Hine, behold, bechinas halavushim, these garments, they are drawn down by means of yomim, by the days. Everybody has a certain number of days of life that he can live. And after a person dies, which everybody dies, I mean, I don't want to break the sad news to you, but that's the fact. We all die. We're here for only a certain amount of time. In that amount of time, we're given our time. Why? In order to make this world a holy place, to do the commandments. There are 365 days of the year, which correspond to the 365 negative commandments. Like, just for instance, this draws down like the veins, the blood vessels, the blood vessels that the blood goes through. This is corresponding to the 365 negative commandments. The blood vessels have to be very exact. They're very precise. Blood goes through them. It's life force. It's also, blood is red. It's warm. That shows on gevura, on power. That's the 365, what we call prohibitions. That brings life from the heart to all of the limbs. The heart in this case is God, pure godliness. To all the limbs, that's the world. And it's drawn down through these blood vessels. That's the negative commandments. And that also corresponds to the days of the year. There's 365 negative commandments in the Torah corresponding to the 365 days of the year. These are gevuros. These are God's power, his severity. Because a person has to have power, severity. What does it mean? To overcome his own nature. In these three aspects of thought, speech, and action. Dainu machshava, dibur, and maisa, thought, speech, and action, in order to serve God alone. Okay, so this is the idea of perfect service of the creator of the universe. Doing, speaking, thinking what God wants. Right? This is the perfect service for what we call a Benoni. The Benoni, the average Jew. Then there's also special Jews called tzaddikim, and they can also serve God with their emotions and their awareness, their consciousness. Right? Normal, regular Jews, they're conscious of themselves. They feel themselves. They get excited about something about themselves, right? If they didn't, they thought some sort of they were interrupted in the middle of Shmona Esrei, or something that doesn't bother them so much, right? But if they lose their wallet, that bothers them. Bothers me also, right? You look in your wallet, you had $300, you open up your wallet and there's nothing there, right? Somebody took your wallet. What are you going? And you have to go somewhere. You have to buy something. What's going to be? You're all worried. But if you miss a couple of blessings in the Shmona Esrei, you sort of forget where you are, and you don't feel that bad. That's the way we are. We don't feel godliness. We don't feel the connection. But on the other hand, we can try to feel, and we certainly can control our thought, speech, and action, our garments. And these garments, that's what makes this smell. Okay. Different places. So this is now the general summary of what we learned. She Yasim Adam, a person has to take to his mind, his thought, lidbonen, and think deeply. Now we're going to learn about the spies. What are the spies? You have to think deeply. I share that that if you think holy thoughts, then you draw down from above, from godliness, a godly garment, the neshama, to your soul. Thought is a garment, right? You clothe your soul in this garment of thought. If you're thinking properly, and you're not thinking about yourself, you're thinking about the creator, you're thinking about doing Torah, you're not thinking selfish thoughts. Your intention is not almanat lakabel pras. You're not just thinking about receiving something. You're just thinking to yourself, I want to be united with God, because I am united with God. I just don't feel it, and because I don't feel it, so I don't act that way. Will. Not to separate from God's oneness. And to think also in this. You have to think how good it is to be connected to God, and also the opposite. How terrible it is to think, even to think bad thoughts. This makes impure garments, the neshama, for your soul. And not like some fools fool themselves. that they think I can think whatever I want to. Nobody sees what I think. Therefore, a person can think whatever he wants to, any thoughts that he wants. I'm not doing anything. Nobody sees me. So therefore, to think what I want, that's okay. Says the Rebbe, it's a big mistake. Big mistake. It's like taking a dirty garment from the sewer and putting it on. And putting it on. But you put it on only in your house. Nobody will see you. Who would do a thing like that? What would you want to do a thing like that for? Says, I don't know. That's just what's available. That's what's available. Gam Omru Razal, the rabbi say, Machshava Ra in Kodesh Baruch Hu. If a person thinks bad thoughts, right? He thinks about blowing up his next door neighbor's car. He drives over my lawn all the time, so I'm going to blow it up. Well, that thought is God doesn't punish you for bad thoughts. So a person can think, okay, I don't get punished. It's not really a deed. How much more so just thoughts that sort of pop up in your mind. You should sort of grab onto them and let them go. You don't really, dwell in them, but on the other hand, you don't avoid them. So you think a thought, your mind goes over here, your mind goes over there. Like it says, reading newspapers, etc. This is not even a bad thought. It's just a meaningless, nothing thought. But really, thought itself, this is a garment, and it's an impure garment. And it closes your soul. From the head to the foot. And a person cannot, this prevents a person from uniting with the Creator. In other words, from revealing the truth. It prevents a person from uniting with his Creator. And therefore, it should be a not Jewish thought, should be kavod chachavim. It should be like serving an idol. Hayoter chamora, which is even more, because this, a person is separated from God's oneness. What happens? A person, God forbid, he goes and he serves idolatry, right? He goes into a church, God forbid. And he comes out, he knows he went into a church. He can think to himself, what did I do? Why did I do a thing like that? Why? Because I have friends, because I have this. It's ridiculous. But on the other hand, if a person thinks bad thoughts, so I think that's no big deal, right? In one way, it's even worse because at least, God forbid if he goes and he worships an idol, so he goes into the place of idolatry. And he can but here, he takes the idolatry into his mind. He thinks these negative thoughts, he invites it into his mind. The Rebbe once spoke about this, about the television. Said people, they take the Pope into their house. And mainly you're walking on the street, you see a big church, so you look the other way. But here, not just the church, you're bringing the Pope. You see in the news, the Pope comes out, the Pope does this. So you're taking it into your mind. This is the Rebbe, he's trying to point out to us, if you want to say this is sort of by the way, but it's not. This is the point. Yerecho, Jericho, means smell. What type of smell are you bringing? It says, what is smell? Smell means the result, the blessing that comes from Torah and commandments. Thought, speech, and action in Torah and the commandments. This brings a good smell into the world. It says there were tzaddikim in the Zohar. They could smell a person and know what commandment he did that day. Moshiach, it says he'll judge by his smelling. That's what he said, that's holiness. But if a person does the opposite, so it brings a so to speak, a bad smell. And for sure, it prevents the smell of godliness. In other words, we have to know how to use our action, speech, and thought properly. And now the Rebbe is talking about thought. Thought, a person thinks, listen, action, I can understand not to do a bad thing. And to talk, okay, I'll try to control myself, not to say negative things. But thought, leave me alone. Let me think what I want to think. Why can't I think? And what it says, the Rebbe, you have to understand that if you're thinking negative thoughts, you're putting on dirty garments. Now, Now, just don't get too negative. Don't turn the screen off, because the Rebbe is not telling you you're going to burn in hell and that you're going to get all sorts of punishments and that bad things are going to happen to you. He's not talking about that at all. It could be you can think bad thoughts your whole life and you'll only get blessings, and because you did commandments or did one commandment in your life, you'll go to heaven and you'll sit there with it. We're not talking about rewards. We're talking about serving the Creator, doing what's right. We're talking about doing what is right. Right? If someone came along and gave you $1 million to do something that you knew for sure was wrong, would you do it? Maybe you would have a battle. It depends. Let's see the money. How wrong is it? It could be. But a person that was really genuine, really had genuine, he wouldn't do it. If he knew the thing was wrong, as much money as you give me, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Okay, so don't do it. Say it. I'm not going to say it either. Think it. Okay, that's our little bit. Says the Rebbe, it's not any different. The fact of the matter, it's not any different. And it could be you'll get the money. You'll go to heaven. You'll get all the big rewards. It could be everything. But we're talking about a whole different thing. Are you doing the truth or not? Are you really serving your Creator or not? That's the question. And here the Rebbe says, no, if you're thinking negative thoughts, bad thoughts, not Torah thoughts, right? Sometimes you have to. You have a business, you have to. But if you have a business and you're acting a healthy business, and that's also serving God. So it says, therefore, these thoughts this is even worse than going into a church worshiping idols, because when you go, at least you can leave the church. Here you have these bad thoughts, they're in your mind. Therefore, what should you do? Make an account of yourself. Every single day you should think, how many thoughts pass through my mind, that these thoughts are garments, and what is their quality? Check yourself out. Be a spy. And this is what we're talking about, the spies. That's what it means, that the days God gave, and not one in them. There's a lot of different interpretations of this. Some people say lo is with a vav, means you have to bring godliness. Is talking about Yom Kippur, that God has one day in the year. Some people say the velo echad mehem, and that velo, and to God echad mehem, you have to draw God's oneness into them. But here he's taking it more in the simple way. It says the days were formed. It's a sentence in Psalms. Days, God, you made days, and not one in them. What does it mean? Sha'omar, it says, the Adam Rishon, this God said to the first man, after he ate from the tree of knowledge, he said, my eyes saw your body. What does it mean? Shara'iti at that arom. Suddenly Adam saw that he was naked. But it says Adam saw he was naked and he didn't have any clothes. So big deal. So he didn't have any clothes. Who was there to see him, right? Who wore clothes? How did he even know you have to have clothes? Adam was created. His wife was created. They didn't have any clothes. There was no clothing stores. There was no fashion. Nobody had clothes. Who had clothes? The animals didn't have clothes. Nobody had clothes. All of a sudden, Adam knew that he was naked. What was he naked? He was naked without the commandments. That's what it means. Beli lavush kamo golem, just like a dead body. Erum anochi, totally naked. Suddenly he realized he didn't have any garments, namely any commandments. He transgressed God's commandment. That's what it says, Yomim Yitzaro, that God made days, perish. Shenatatali Yomim, God, you gave me these days. What are these days? The days that I can make garments for myself, Lal Bishbam and Neshama, to draw in them, by means of them, this level of echad. Of a low echad behem. That's what it says. God, you made days, and there is a day that there is not oneness. What does it mean? Sha'ani, that Adam, the first man, said, I am the one, Shalom Shachti. I did not draw down this level of oneness of God. He ate from the tree, did what God told him not to do. So therefore, he messed the whole entire thing up. And that is, Ubechinas Maraglim, that's the idea of the spies. What are the spies? To check these garments, the smell, Yerecho means smell. Sheshalach. I'm sorry. 1 minute. Right. All right. So that's what it means. That's what it means. A person has to check himself to see if his thought, speech, and action, lo ragil, oh, here it is. That's the level of the spies. Sheshalach Yoshua, that Joshua sent. Lo ragil at Yericho, to spy out Yericho, Jericho. Yericho means smell. Hainu bechinas reach. This is the level of the smell. To ragil, to check out, to scout out, to survey, ulavchin, and to discern if these garments, the garments with the smell of the garments of thought, speech, and action, if the smell is proper, if they did Torah and commandments properly, not like Adam, that he didn't have any garments. He removed, so to speak, he realized that he was naked without any commandments. And that's the idea. With the commandments, you can draw down a good smell into the world. That's Yerecho. So that's what it means. The spies that Joshua sent out, they worked. Check out your thought, speech, and action to see if they have the smell, the blessings of God. Are you using it for the proper thing? The spies that Moses sent out, the Torah, Orez, Canaan, Hainu, Livchon, Mechinas Ava V'yira. That was a little bit different. That was a much deeper level. Moses sent out to see, and that's what we're supposed to do in ourselves, to check out not just our thought, speech, and action, that we can control, to check out if we have love and fear of God. This, you can't control your love and fear of God unless you really feel God. You have to really feel God to genuinely love God. You have to really feel God, right? You can't, somebody gives you a precious emerald, something like that. You look at it in uncut, you don't know what it is. A piece of what is green, I don't know what color emerald is, a green stone. It's nice, good, okay. Take this, watch it, guard it. What for? What for? It's just a big lump in my pocket. What do I need it for? A person that understands, what is that? Wow, that is, let me have that thing. This is an emerald, it's valuable. Same thing with God. You can't value God. You can't have love and fear, right? Love means value, and fear means you're afraid to lose that valuable thing unless you feel that God is valuable. And who feels God? You feel that God is valuable. You can think maybe in your mind, read what other people, to actually feel it. It says this is impossible except through the level of Moshe. You have to have Moses. Bechinas Chama. Moses is the level of the sun, S-U-N. Shehu mechachma. This comes from the level of Chachma. That's what it says, that Moses, the face of Moses was like the face of the sun in the sky. Hainu shava l'kol nefesh. It's not equal to everybody. Therefore, therefore God could not command him. And therefore it's not relevant to everybody. That's why God says, I'm not commanding you. Same thing with us. God is not commanding us that we should try to achieve love and fear. We should try. But we can't, if we don't have it, we can't be expected to check ourselves out. And it's only possible in Moses, people that get special blessings from God can really have this love and fear of God. It's a commandment to make an attempt to learn, to understand, to think about it. Moses, in other words, his 12 was to, in other words, to check out the soul, which is not the case. The spies that sent, the scouts that Yoshua sent out, this is possible for every person to check on his thought, speech, and action. Namely, that your soul should not be naked, that you should have the thoughts of the Torah and the commandments, like we said before. And that's the whole difference between Moshe and the spies. The spies of Moshe and the spies of Joshua. Okay, this is already more Kabbalistic things that we should, the Rebbe is sending us to all these different places where to look and find out. Good, okay, so the summary is that Moses sent out spies to check out the soul, to check out the whole entire land of Israel, the whole entirety of it. And therefore, it couldn't be commanded. Moses did it on his own. He thought that he would send out these emissaries and they would refine the whole land of Israel. They'd see what was wrong with the whole land of Israel. In other words, in this case, it represents the soul of a Jew. And that you can't control the soul of a Jew. Right? Moses decided on his own. Only people that were like Moses can really control their soul. On the other hand, we have the spies that sent out Joshua. The spies that sent out Joshua, they weren't to scout out the soul. They were to scout out just Jericho. Jericho means just the thought, speech, and action. Are your thoughts, speech, and action bringing down the smell of God, reach? And that's in the ability of everyone to do it. And that's why the spies that Joshua sent out were more successful than those that Moses sent out. But in the future, we'll fulfill, that's how the book of Tanya starts off, to hate tzaddik. Everyone will be a tzaddik. In other words, have real awareness, true value of God, the creator, the giver of the Torah. Then everyone will have love and fear of God. All right, let's do the Sikha of the Rebbe. Sikha of the Rebbe. Welcome, everyone.